Okay, the epoxy is cured. Want to take something like this very fine-toothed dowel cutting saw. I ruined it because I was using it one time. It's a pole saw, and I pushed and I bent it because it's very flimsy. But just kind of go along the edge and pull to cut the fiberglass. Make certain and sure that you don't push the glass away from what you just got it stuck to. And then when you're filing down the rough edges, pull it along the edge and then clean up. Don't be going in where you might get a chance to lift the glass. It shouldn't, but it may. And you don't want that to happen. So we're going to give it another coat. Probably as heavy as this coat is. One more weave filling coat should do it. So that'll give me a good thick wet out and a good thick weave filling, and then I'll put the two pads together on the next little segment. Okay, I'll start off with okay again. I've got 3 coats of epoxy, just straight mixed epoxy, part A and part B mixed together on both pieces. So now I have a nice thick wear coat for when the Daggerboard goes up and down. It'll give me some wear and also waterproof the plywood, and also to make certain that when you're doing this that you give the edges a good coat every time you put a layer on, that it sucks it up and fills it in. When we put it in, we'll be doing some other filleting and protecting, so it'd be a rare instance when I get done that water would be able to even get to the edge. So now I've got both pieces, and I've got a series of mechanical holes with stainless. So now I'm going to mix up some Gel Magic and butter it up good on both sides and screw it together, and that'll be it. And then we'll put it for the construction of this, and then we'll put it in the boat, and that is some positioning and that kind of stuff we'll get to when I quit blabbering about this. Well, we have the Daggerboard case finished up. I've got the sides Gel Magic together, and then stainless steel screws on both sides to mechanically fasten it also. And when you're gluing them together, the 2 parts you've already built up with the glass surfaces, be sure that you have plenty of Gel Magic in between them, and that it squeezes out so that you get I don't know if you can see it in there or not, you want a nice bead all the way down, because the other side has got the fiberglass and all the epoxy in there to protect that seam. But you want to make certain that you got some bleed out on the other side, that you don't have any little gaps in there, because the glass didn't come up and roll over the top of this piece. It didn't come up. We brought it up and then sheared it off. Earlier versions I had rounded this edge a little bit more and rolled the glass over, but that got to be a real pain in the butt. And so as long as I've got a good squeeze out of Gel Magic along the edges here, I'm happy with the water tightness of it. So that's it. We got our seat supports on top, and then we go back in and refocus and zoom in on what we're going to do next. If you remember, we put this line in, it was 2-inch offset from the edge of the plywood before we did anything to it. So now I've re-established a 2-inch offset back to what I believe is the true center line of these 2 pieces coming together. The plumb bob, my pencil bob I've got hanging here, is measured off from the transom is at the 5.5 foot at the very center of the Daggerboard case itself, the opening. So I will measure back from that, but I need to mark that, and I'm going to go ahead and drill a test hole on that line down in here, because I know this area is going to be inside the Daggerboard case when I cut it out. And I'm going to drill a hole just to see if that line is true, and then I'll come back. Okay, this was my first test hole going down on the line I thought I had. I went underneath and drilled back up ahead and aft of that line on the true crack underneath, so I'm off just a little bit. So now I'll use these 2 spots to set the center line to mount the Daggerboard trunk on. Now that we know where the center of the hull is, and I went back and I drilled some extra holes that will be outside of the case. I'm not worried about holes coming through because I haven't done anything to the bottom side yet, and then a lot of those places will be cut over, and the ones that will not be cut out of the hull, that will remain in the hull, will be filled with epoxy, and when I'm sealing the edges, and then with the ez-fillet or the Gel Magic, whichever I use to seal the seams on the outside when I flip it over, and then it gets two layers of a layer of tape and a layer of glass, so I'm not worried about holes there. But the one thing you want to do is to be sure that you mark your center lines. You know, you can get your sliding square out, and then mark center lines on the bottom to line up with the bottom of the hull, but also come up on the top in order to determine the upper center line, which we'll use the pencil bobs then to locate and then hold in place while we epoxy it into its new permanent position. So I just want to make certain you had that knowledge. You'll notice that I've got my heavy board back across on the thwarts here on the beam, and then I got my level on it. I've got the boat tied down again fore and aft, and I've got a smaller level on the Daggerboard trunk itself, and then a plumb bob fore and aft to be certain that the upper part is level and centered with the center of the boat, along with the bottom part that's squared up on the center line of the hull on the bottom. So I'm going to let that set overnight and then come back tomorrow and take a look at it again before I make everything permanent with the epoxy. I'm probably going to Gel Magic some spots, like spot welding around the corners to hold it in place, and then I'll mix up some ez-fillet and then use a putty knife to push it under where the top of, or the bottom of the 2x2 is, and the curvature of the hull. I'll just push the ez-fillet back in there after I get it Gel Magic, you know, tack welded in place, and then once that cures up, then I'll go around with some Gel Magic again, and then fillet and then glass taping, and that will be in, and then I can go on with the rest of the interior seat heights. The height of the Daggerboard case on my boats determines the seat height fore and aft, and I'll show you how I determine that, or figure it out later on. It came out yesterday afternoon after I finished up that segment on how to square it up and level it up, and I thought, well, I got the perfect opportunity now when I came back and I saw that the pencil bobs, everything was still level, lined up with the center line marks top and bottom. So I thought, what the hell. I went and mixed up some Gel Magic and just dabbed it on with a stick. I didn't go put the nozzle on, and then just tack it down in about in the corners both sides and in the middle on each side. So now I'm going to mix up some, well, I do a little bit of rough sanding on the hull part, because these seams have been set for quite a while. I'm going to rough them up a little bit to get the mechanical joint, because on the System 3 products you can go up to like 3 days and still have a chemical joint without having to sand between coats. But this one's been setting so long, I'm going to give it some rough sanding around the edges, a light coat of regular straight mixed epoxy, parts A and B, and then I'm going to go mix up some ez-fillet and do a fillet all around. And excess epoxy, go ahead and just wet out all the stuff that is going to need it eventually. Waste not, want not. Get the ends, the sides, underneath. Try to seal up as much as possible, because some of these places down in here that will be boxed in need to be protected from condensation. And before I close them in, I'll give everything a really good coat of straight epoxy and straight mixed A and B before I finish.